It's January 3rd, 2013. About the end of the day. Got to spend about a half a day at shop. So where we're at is we've got the motor and transmission out. We did that Saturday. So what I've done is put both cars back up on the cribbing, and I threw the mock-up 4L60E underneath the Pontiac. Because what I'm wondering is, what I'm seeing from my measurements is the floor pan for the Miata, the main structure of it, is about 9.5 inches wider. So we could cut and paste and fold and everything else, but there's nothing wrong with the floor pan of the Pontiac. So the next concept is to take the firewall, which of course folds down and overlaps underneath the floor pan on the Miata, and cut it just behind that lap. So from the center line of the Miata front suspension back to that lap is about 25.5 inches. On the Pontiac, from the center line of the front wheel back is about 24 inches. So what I'm wondering is should we use just from the firewall section where it laps into the floor pan forward, the firewall, and of course the supports in front of where the doors bolt on. Use that whole structure from the Miata. It'll make it simpler, but we'll be able to use the stock seat locations. The floor pans are fine. Everything will bolt up as stock. So that's where I'm kind of going right now. I'll probably spend tomorrow looking at that also just to see how it is. So this is the floor pan of the Pontiac. So there's the 4L60E. Probably needs to go up a couple more inches, but that's not a big concern right now. So I'm going to try to shine with my light. Right about here is that seam. There we go. Kind of see it in the middle of the picture now. Right about there is that seam, which is about 24 inches from the center line of the front wheel. So I think if we cut this there all the way out to the rocker and then lap that other section over the top of it from the Miata, it'll lower the car a little bit, but it'll also make a very strong joint at the floor pan. So this seam, which you can kind of see right there, that is the floor pan driver's side of the Miata. And that seam is about 25.5 inches back from the center line of the wheel. And the reason I kind of like this idea now is that we're going to want to tie the frame front to back. And this kind of goes back a little bit. And I don't know if I can get the light in there, but you can see that seam where, in a sense, this box section. We could cut it behind the box section, take that out, and then build from that box section all the way back on the Pontiac, because we are going to four-link that car, and because we want to put wider wheels in the back, we're going to have to narrow it. So it might work out where we can tie at least the lower control arm mounts to the front of the Pontiac frame, or front of the Miata frame, through that frame rail, and use that as our center line. So that'll make the frame very strong and also strengthen up the unibody. You can also see that bolt that I'm highlighting right there. That is the rearmost mount. There's one on the other passenger side too. That's the rearmost mount for the bolt-in subframe on the Miata. So that will be an integral part, and that is forward of that cut line. So we will be able to maintain all the mounting points for the front suspension. So I've been trying to find the best way to level the body, be able to adjust it, because my floor is definitely not flat like most people's garage floors aren't. So what I came up with, it's kind of seen it online a couple times in some pictures, is I made a template for the bottom of the rocker. And what I've seen people do is either weld a 1.5 or 2 inch square tube down from here, and I'm thinking of welding something across this way that will hang down, and then maybe put a couple spacers or something onto a tube that runs across the car, and under that support it with another piece of tubing that's clamped together, and then put jack stands. So what I did was I went to an RV store, and I remember 30 years ago when we were kids we used to camp a lot and have those screw jacks. So what I thought is build a frame under this that I can take apart and reuse for other things in the future, but use the screw jacks to get the car perfectly level. And then got some 2-inch square tubing. This happens to be the 1/8 inch wall. And then cut that pattern out using just my plasma cutter, and then grind them close. Doesn't have to be anything perfect because I'm just going to tack them to the rocker. So here's my overall concept for attaching the car temporarily to a piece of 2x2 1/4-inch wall that runs across the car, and then I use some 1x1 just as a spacer so that I can slide the floor pan from the Miata up underneath to attach to the floor pan of the Pontiac. And I left myself some gaps, so excuse me, I'll just bridge that with because I only want to put 3 or 4 tacks on each side just to hold it in position so it doesn't move, and it also gives some rigidity a little bit when I cut it apart. And then what I'll do, these aren't the actual jack stands I'll use, or screw jacks, is I will do this front and rear in front of the rear tire, or excuse me, and behind the front tire, and then put another piece of 2x2 square tubing that I'll clamp together, and I'll show you those almost like a U-bolt. Put a couple U-bolts on there to hold it, and I figure then I've got some heavier duty screw clamps to actually lift the car up, and that'll give me all my support that I need. Of course I'll have extra jack stands under there in case something happens, but I think that'll give me a good square base. If I was going to do a chassis, yeah, I'd make a chassis table, but for this, I think this will be fine. So it's the morning of January 8th, 2018. Didn't film anything on Saturday, just was here for a couple hours. Got the bracing mounted to the car, just kind of booger welded on because I don't want it to be real tight, just enough to support the car, and then we can come back later with a cutoff wheel and pop those off, and it doesn't really tear up the marker panels. And then from there you can see we've welded in the cross braces, and then the front to back braces are just clamped on. And all those are really for is to kind of keep the, from moving back and forth, so if for some reason we get some forces on the car, it keeps those cross braces from moving back and forth. So they're just clamped down, plus I can reuse all the tube later if I want to. The plan today is kind of like I always do, start at the front of the car, start stripping everything off all the way to the back. Important thing is, especially for this one, is to remove the gas tank, remove all the fuel lines, because we hopefully will start cutting and grinding on this either this week or in a couple weeks. So we want to make sure the garage is safe, the car is safe, and we don't have any issues. Remove all of the steering components, the proportion valve, the master cylinder, steering, all the lines, drag link, that stuff, because those can be reused on other cars and they're getting harder and harder to find. So Bubba does have a couple more Vegas, we can reuse them for those, or he's got friends in the Vega community that can always reuse those components because they are all in really good shape. It's lunchtime on, what did I say, January 8th, 2017, and we've got some progress. So I spent a couple hours removing the front suspension and 3 of the 4 wheels, so we can put those to good use with other people that might be doing restoration or need some good parts. The front suspension is now gone. Steering system is gone. The X-brace, which used to stiffen the frame. That unbolted. Basically over here, just the bolts just kind of came out because it wasn't really attached to anything. But it was strong everywhere else. Got steering system out, like I said earlier, and brake booster and proportion valve. Took that all out as one piece so the next person can use it. And we'll probably take that bracket off too, because that's probably specific for this one. So next, start peeling back the lines, get the fuel lines out of the way, get the brake lines out of the way, and head underneath the car. So that's the plan this afternoon, unless we get the ice storm that comes in. So if we get the ice storm that comes in, it'll probably be tomorrow. We've made some progress after lunch. The fuel tank is out. I actually took it outside and put it in my truck so I can haul it away in a couple days. And the rear end is out. And then I've gone through and leveled the car so I'm within about 1/10 of a degree everywhere. So I figured that's good enough for tonight. So the car will be nice and safe. I'm going to probably put some videos together since I'm behind. I ran out of storage space on my computer. And then tomorrow morning I can go ahead and tear the last of the brake and the fuel hard lines out, which will probably take about 10 minutes. And then we'll be ready to go.